to genuinely unearth the essence of your being, the initial stride involves a courageous encounter with the self you have been instinctively evading. Friends, colleagues, fellow voyagers, traversing this intricate expedition we call life, my discourse today centers upon a notion that might stir unease, perhaps even a sense of trepidation. It concerns venturing into the uncharted territories that lie within our own consciousness, about confronting the facets of ourselves we instinctively prefer to conceal within the shadowy recesses of our minds. Today we embark on an exploration of the philosophy of the shadow and the profound verity that to genuinely metamorphose into the individuals we are destined to be, we must summon the audacity to embrace the selves we are apprehensive of becoming. Reflect for a moment upon those attributes of your being that you actively endeavor to suppress. Perhaps it manifests as a fleeting surge of anger you swiftly subdue, a self-serving inclination that evokes guilt, a creative impulse you deem impractical, or a vulnerability you apprehend will be exploited. These are fragments of our shadow self, the repository of all that we deem unacceptable, undesirable, or simply not representative of who we believe ourselves to be. From our formative years, we are conditioned to present a refined, socially acceptable exterior. We assimilate what garners praise and what incurs punishment, what is celebrated and what is met with shame. Consequently, we unconsciously exile aspects of our being that fail to conform to this idealized self-image. But what transpires to these exiled aspects? Do they merely dissipate into oblivion? Nay, they fester in the obscurity, exerting their influence upon our thoughts, our behaviors, and our interpersonal connections in subtle, often detrimental ways. They can manifest as self-sabotage, unwarranted projections onto others, or a persistent undercurrent of incompleteness. Yet within this very shadow resides a profound secret, a potent truth. As our opening speaker eloquently reminded us, the shadow is not merely a wasteland of negativity, it is also a reservoir of untapped potential. The courage we have suppressed might be the very fortitude we require to pursue our aspirations. The assertiveness we have deemed aggressive could be the linchpin to establishing healthy boundaries. The vulnerability we are hesitant to display might be the bridge to forging deeper connections and intimacy. We have concealed not only the darkness, but also the brilliance that we were fearful of allowing to shine forth. This brings us to our second pivotal point. Apprehension functions as a compass, unerringly pointing towards the domains of growth. What are you most reluctant to acknowledge about your own being? What are you most hesitant to articulate? Oftentimes, the response to these inquiries illuminates the very trajectory you must traverse. The trepidation we experience when we contemplate embracing these concealed aspects serves as a signal. It intimates that we stand on the precipice of something significant, something transformative. It is the resistance our ego mounts against the expansion of our being. To recoil from this apprehension is to remain confined within the limitations we have unconsciously constructed. Conversely, to lean into it, to meticulously explore its contours, is to unlock novel dimensions of our own selves. Finally, and perhaps most significantly, our third central tenet, underscores that the objective is integration, not eradication. We cannot simply wish away the shadow. It is an intrinsic component of the human experience. Endeavoring to eradicate it is akin to attempting to eliminate darkness. Instead, the path to wholeness lies in ushering these concealed aspects into the illumination of awareness, to comprehend their origins, to acknowledge their presence, and to integrate them into our conscious being. This does not imply that we become our shadow. Rather, it signifies that we become more complete. We gain access to a broader spectrum of emotions, a greater repertoire of behaviors, and a more profound understanding of ourselves and others. We cultivate greater compassion, both towards our own imperfections and towards those of others. We come to realize that light and shadow are not opposing forces, but two facets of the same coin, both indispensable for a complete and vibrant existence. Therefore, I implore you today to undertake a courageous step, to peer into the shadows that dwell within, to identify the aspects of yourself you have been reluctant to acknowledge, the person you have been afraid to become. It will not be facile. It will necessitate vulnerability and self-compassion. However, the reward is immense. The liberation of your authentic self, the unlocking of your full potential. Dare to be the artist who embraces their unconventional vision. Dare to be the leader who reveals their vulnerability. Dare to be the lover who articulates their deepest desires. Dare to be the person you have always been, even the parts you were instructed to conceal. Our shadow self is not merely a dusty attic filled with the cobwebs of our perceived flaws and societal rejects. It is, in fact, a vibrant, albeit often neglected vault, brimming with untapped potential and latent qualities. Envision it as an iceberg. The small visible portion above the surface represents our conscious awareness, the persona we present to the world. But the vast submerged mass beneath, often unseen and unacknowledged, is ours. Within this hidden realm reside not only the negative emotions and impulses we have been conditioned to suppress, anger, jealousy, selfishness, fear, but also a wealth of positive attributes, dormant talents, and authentic desires that we have deemed unacceptable, too vulnerable, or simply not representative of who we believe ourselves to be. To the very moment we begin to navigate the intricate social landscape, we are subtly and sometimes overtly taught which aspects of ourselves are acceptable and which are not. We learn to curate our behavior, molding ourselves to fit the expectations of family, friends, and society at large. The spontaneous joy that was once celebrated might be hushed in favor of composure. The assertive nature that could have blossomed into leadership might be labeled as bossy and discouraged. The deep well of empathy might be shielded for fear of being overwhelmed by the pain of others. In this process of socialization, valuable parts of our authentic selves are relegated to the shadow, not because they are inherently negative, but because they do not align with the carefully constructed image we strive to maintain. However, these exiled aspects do not simply vanish. They continue to exert a powerful, often unconscious, influence on our lives. Unacknowledged talents can lead to a persistent feeling of dissatisfaction, a sense that we are not living up to our full capacity. Repressed desires can manifest as vague longings or even unhealthy compulsions. Disowned vulnerabilities can sabotage our relationships, preventing us from forming genuine connections based on trust and authenticity. We might find ourselves inexplicably drawn to or repelled by certain qualities in others, unknowingly projecting our own unacknowledged shadow onto them. This internal division creates a sense of incompleteness, a subtle but persistent feeling that something is missing. The journey of confronting our shadow, therefore, is not a descent into darkness, but an excavation of buried treasure. It is about recognizing that the energy we expend suppressing these hidden parts is energy that could be channeled into growth, creativity, and a deeper sense of self-acceptance. The courage we have deemed reckless might be the very force needed to pursue our passions. The sensitivity we have labeled as weakness could be the foundation of profound empathy and connection. The unconventional ideas we have dismissed as impractical might hold the seeds of innovation and unique contribution. Consider the artist who stifles their unique style for fear of criticism, or the leader who suppresses their intuition in favor of purely logical decisions. They are denying themselves access to vital aspects of their being, limiting their potential for true impact and fulfillment. By daring to explore the unacceptable parts of themselves, the unconventional perspectives, the emotional depths, they can unlock a richer, more authentic expression of their talents. The fear we feel when contemplating these hidden aspects is often a powerful indicator of their significance. It is the ego's resistance to change, its attempt to maintain the familiar, even if that familiarity is limiting. Embracing the shadow is not about unleashing our worst impulses or indulging in destructive behaviors. It is about bringing awareness to these hidden parts, understanding their origins, and integrating them into our conscious understanding of ourselves. It is about recognizing that these seemingly negative or undesirable traits are often simply expressions of unmet needs, past wounds, or undeveloped strengths. By acknowledging them with compassion and curiosity, we can begin to understand their purpose and find healthier ways to express them. This process of integration allows us to reclaim the energy that was previously bound up in repression. It frees us to be more spontaneous, more creative, more resilient, and ultimately more whole. When we embrace the entirety of our being, including the parts we once feared or rejected, we step into a greater sense of authenticity and power. The shadow, once a source of limitation and unconscious influence, becomes a wellspring of untapped potential, waiting to be discovered and integrated into the fullness of who we are meant to be. The discomfort we experience when confronted with certain thoughts, feelings, or urges within ourselves is not a random occurrence. It is a deeply ingrained mechanism, a primal alarm system signaling that we are approaching the boundaries of our self-imposed limitation. Our second pivotal understanding illuminates this crucial concept. Apprehension functions as a compass, its needle pointing unerringly towards the very territories within ourselves that hold the keys to profound growth and liberation. The aspects of ourselves we are most afraid to acknowledge, express, or embody are often precisely the ones that, when embraced and integrated, will lead us to a more authentic, powerful, and fulfilled existence. Consider the emotions you habitually avoid, Perhaps it is the sting of vulnerability, the raw intensity of anger, the unsettling pang of envy, or the quiet ache of loneliness. These feelings are not inherently negative. They are messengers carrying vital information about our needs, our boundaries, and our deepest desires. When we instinctively recoil from these emotions, labeling them as bad or unacceptable, we shut down an important avenue for self-understanding. We fail to recognize that the discomfort they evoke is often a sign that a significant aspect of ourselves is seeking recognition and integration. The same principle applies to the qualities we fear to express. Perhaps you harbor a deep-seated creative urge but dismiss it as frivolous or impractical. Maybe you possess a natural assertiveness but fear being perceived as aggressive. Or perhaps you yearn for intimacy but are terrified of rejection. These unexpressed aspects of ourselves, relegated to the shadows of our consciousness, represent potential pathways to joy, fulfillment, and stronger connection. The fear that surrounds them is not a stop sign, but rather a marker on the map of our personal evolution, indicating a point of significant transformation. Think of the times in your life when you felt the most significant personal growth. Often these periods were preceded by moments of intense discomfort, by situations that forced you to confront your limitations and step outside your comfort zone. Whether it was taking a leap of faith in your career, ending a toxic relationship, or facing a deeply held fear, the initial feeling was likely one of anxiety and apprehension. Yet, it was precisely by navigating through that fear that you emerged stronger, wiser, and more authentically yourself. The things we are most afraid to admit about ourselves, our perceived weaknesses, our unconventional desires, our past mistakes, hold immense power when brought into the light of conscious awareness. By acknowledging these aspects with honesty and self-compassion, we begin to dismantle their unconscious hold over us. The fear loses its power when it is no longer allowed to fester in the darkness. Instead, it becomes a guidepost, illuminating the areas where we need to heal, to learn, and to grow. This is not to suggest that we should recklessly abandon all caution or embrace every fleeting impulse. Rather, it is about cultivating a courageous curiosity towards our inner landscape, including the parts that make us feel uneasy. It is about questioning the judgments we have internalized and recognizing that what we have labeled as bad or unacceptable might simply be an undeveloped strength or an unmet need yearning for attention. The fear we experience when contemplating our shadow is often the voice of our ego, desperately clinging to the familiar, even if that familiarity is ultimately limiting and unfulfilling. The ego thrives on maintaining a consistent self-image, and anything that threatens to disrupt that image, including the emergence of our hidden aspects, can trigger feelings of anxiety and resistance. However, true growth lies in transcending the limitations of the ego and embracing the full spectrum of our being. Therefore, instead of shrinking away from the things that scare you about yourself, I urge you to lean in, to explore the contours of your discomfort with courage and self-compassion, to ask yourself, what am I truly afraid of here? What beliefs or judgments are fueling this fear? And what potential for growth might lie on the other side? By embracing your fears, by Following the compass of your discomfort, you will inevitably discover hidden strengths, unlock dormant talents, and step into a more authentic and empowered version of yourself. The path to true self-discovery and fulfillment is often paved with the very things we are most afraid to face. The journey into the depths of our shadow self is not a quest for eradication, a futile attempt to surgically remove the perceived negative aspects of our being. Such an endeavor is not only impossible, but also fundamentally misunderstands the intricate and essential role these hidden parts play in the tapestry of our wholeness. Our third central understanding underscores this vital concept. The ultimate aim of engaging with our shadow is integration, not elimination. We are not striving to become beings of pure light, devoid of any perceived darkness. Instead, we seek to bring the unconscious into conscious awareness, to understand and accept the totality of ourselves, thereby diminishing the unconscious power these disowned aspects hold over us, and fostering a more balanced and resilient psyche. The very notion of eliminating the negative parts of ourselves is based on a flawed premise that our being can be neatly divided into good and bad, acceptable and unacceptable. In reality, these seemingly opposing forces are often two sides of the same coin. Our anger, when understood and channeled constructively, can become a powerful force for setting boundaries and advocating for ourselves and others. Our fear, when acknowledged and processed, can sharpen our intuition and guide us away from genuine danger. Even our perceived weaknesses can be sources of empathy and connection, allowing us to relate to the struggles of others on a deeper level. To attempt to eliminate these emotions and impulses is to diminish the richness and complexity of our human experience. Furthermore, the act of suppressing or denying parts of ourselves requires a significant amount of psychic energy. We become engaged in a constant internal battle, policing our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors to ensure they align with our idealized self-image. This internal conflict can lead to feelings of anxiety, stress, and a persistent sense of inauthenticity. By bringing our shadow aspects into the light of awareness, we free up this bound energy, allowing it to be redirected towards more creative and fulfilling pursuits. Integration, on the other hand, is an act of radical self-acceptance. It involves acknowledging the existence of these hidden parts without judgment, understanding their origins, and recognizing their potential purpose. It means accepting that we are not perfect, that we are capable of a wide range of emotions and behaviors, and that this complexity is what makes us human. This acceptance does not equate to condoning harmful actions or indulging in destructive impulses. Instead, it provides a foundation for understanding the root causes of these tendencies and making conscious choices about how we express ourselves. When we consciously engage with our shadow, we begin to see the projections we cast onto others. We recognize that the traits that irritate or anger us most in others often reflect disowned aspects of ourselves. By acknowledging these qualities within ourselves, we diminish their power to trigger us externally and cultivate greater compassion for the imperfections of those around us. This process fosters deeper and more authentic connections, built on a foundation of mutual understanding and acceptance. The journey of shadow integration is not a one-time event, but an ongoing process of self-discovery and growth. As we evolve and encounter new experiences, different aspects of our shadow may emerge. Cultivating a practice of self-reflection, mindfulness, and honest introspection allows us to continually engage with these emerging aspects with curiosity and compassion. Therapy, journaling, and creative expression can also be powerful tools in this process, providing safe spaces to explore the hidden corners of our psyche. Ultimately, the integration of our shadow leads to a greater sense of wholeness and inner peace. We are no longer fragmented beings constantly at war with ourselves. Instead, we become more integrated, more resilient, and more authentically ourselves. We gain access to a wider range of emotional responses, allowing us to navigate the complexities of life with greater wisdom and flexibility. We develop a deeper understanding of our own motivations and the motivations of others, fostering greater empathy and connection. The fear that once surrounded our shadow begins to dissipate, replaced by a sense of self-acceptance and empowerment. It is in embracing the entirety of our being, the light and the shadow, that we truly step into our full potential and live a life of greater authenticity and fulfillment. In conclusion, the path to becoming who we are truly meant to be is not about striving for an unattainable ideal of perfection. It is about bravely venturing into the depths of our shadow selves, acknowledging the hidden potentials and the uncomfortable truths that reside within. Fear in this context is not an obstacle, but a vital guide, pointing us towards the very aspects of ourselves that yearn for integration and expression. And ultimately, the goal is not to eliminate the darkness, but to embrace the entirety of our being, to weave the light and the shadow into a rich and authentic tapestry of self. By daring to become who we are afraid to be, we unlock our full potential, cultivate deeper self-compassion, and step into a more whole and empowered existence. Thank you